Jubilee. Hey y'all, hey y'all, hey y'all. What's going on? And we're back. If you're watching the replay, you have just tuned in to Jubilee. We're counting down 50 days of prayer for women. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this around and get started. If you're watching the replay, I'm sorry you couldn't join us live, but your hearts still count. So tap, 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 tap on the screen. Share this with your followers on Twitter. Share it with your followers on Periscope. Share the love. Hey y'all, come on in, come on in, come on in. So I promise it's Saturday night. It's going to be a quick scope. You coming in with the purple hearts. I see you. I see you. Salute. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Today we're going to talk about health or wholeness, which may or may not be a trick question. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. So, how you guys doing? I hope that your Saturday went really, really well. It's almost over. I guess it's getting late. It's not quite late yet, but this will be a quick scope, a Saturday night scope. Thank you, silly girl, for inviting your followers. We'll just go ahead and get started here. So if this is your first time on the scope and you haven't been tuned into this Jubilee series that we're doing right now, basically, so my name is Kelly Simone. I'm founder of hiphopchurchgirl.com, which is a faith lifestyle blog. Oh, wow. Really? Well, that's awesome. Thanks. Why do I have so many followers? You know, I just think that people are, am I famous? No, I am not famous. I am not sure how I have so many views. No, I do not see them, but thanks for letting me know. I think if people are tuning in, then they're tuning in because the Lord has something good to say. So as I was saying, I'm founder of hiphopchurchgirl.com. Well, maybe I am famous and it's just coming and materializing and I don't even know it. Who knows? And so hiphopchurchgirl.com is a faith lifestyle blog for girls. Yes, scope famous, for girls who love Jesus. And so today, awesome. Thank you. And so today we're going to talk about wholeness. So if you were on my scope a few days ago, I want to say it was like Thursday. I had this God had dropped something on my spirit and he had this word of the Lord that I had shared. And so that has expired by now. I'm thinking about putting it on my blog. Well, thank you. Go ahead and tweet me and let people know we got some good stuff to talk about here. We're going to talk about Jesus. So make sure they're okay with that. Yeah, so I had a word of the Lord that the Holy Spirit had dropped on my heart. And I shared it at that time. And so God has just really been dealing with me about expounding upon, no, I'm definitely not from LA. I'm from Chicago. But I don't sing. Well, I sing in the shower, but who doesn't? But yeah, so today we're going to talk about wholeness. So if you're not familiar with the term Jubilee, I'm going to get into that today. Hey, Chicago famous, Chi-Town, represent, west side. So today, let's get into it. I don't want to hold you guys up too long because I want to get back to this Oklahoma game. It's been kind of good. So I think it's tied. The last score I saw was 20-20. So there was a part of the word of the Lord that said, I have called you to wholeness. You are not so fragile that you cannot fight. I have reinforced your bones and strengthened your sinews for battle. And so this is all tied into Jubilee. So what is Jubilee? Jubilee it was a Jewish law that basically said that everybody would be restored to their original property, right? Everybody would be restored to their original position. It's the 7th year in a series of, it's the 50th year, I'm sorry, in a series of 7 years. So 7 cycles of 7 years. And then on the 50th year, God had declared that it was a year that people were not supposed to reap, that the land was to rest, that all debts would be canceled, and that people would be returned to their original position. So if you were a slave, which had a different connotation in that society than it has in American society, it was mostly about being in debt. It wasn't about, being a certain color or anything like that. So if you were a slave, you would be returned to your family. And if you had given out your land, you would get your land back. So it was essentially a 50-year cycle where you would get debt cancellation. And so for Christians, we know that Jesus is basically our version of Jubilee. And so essentially what that means is that Jesus made it possible for us to be restored to the family of God and to our original position as King's kids, as God's kids, right? And so, unfortunately, women, for various reasons, have been under attack for millennia, have not been able to live as fully equal human beings, as being the people that God created us to be, right? And so that word of the Lord that I had read in part was, I want my daughters back. This is basically God saying, I want my daughters back. I already restored women, so I'm not doing it again. I just want you to live out the restoration that I provided for you. Hey, how are you, author Patrina? Hey, girl, hey. I think, is this your first time here? I don't think I've seen you before. Hey, girl, hey. And so Jubilee is about restoring people to wholeness. And so we're going to talk about health or wholeness. Now, a lot of times when you hear the word health, you think about your body, right? You think about being in great shape. You think about eating well. You think about muscles, pop, pop, pop. You think about being snatched in the waist and all those kind of things. You think about, being able to run and being able to breathe well and not having any diseases. And all of that is a part of health, right? But there's a much bigger implication when we're talking about health. And it was actually kind of a trick question in the title today where it said health or wholeness, because really when you study the root word for health, it does mean wholeness. So health is actually an Old English word for wholeness. It means soundness, it means wellness, and it means prosperity in Middle English. So it is not a derivative of the word to heal, because heal actually means to restore to health. So healing is more of a verb and health is more of a noun. So it's a little history lesson. So health and wholeness are actually the same thing. But when you think about wholeness, you think about nothing missing, nothing broken. You think about having everything that you need. Prosperity has a different sound. It's more holistic than just saying that I'm healthy, because people kind of think, oh, you're just talking about your body. Well, wholeness means that there's nothing missing and nothing broken in your life, that you have everything that you need to be the person that you're supposed to be and to do the things that you're supposed to do. So that has a totally different implication than just saying, I've been on the Whole30 challenge and girl, I'm just getting all this kale. Yes, I just had a great kale salad and I'm so healthy and, my cholesterol is down and all those kind of things. This is bigger than that. So Jubilee is about restoring people to health. It's about restoring people to wholeness. And so it cancels anything in your life that is not whole. It restores you back to equity with your neighbor. It restores you back to wholeness, and it cancels your debt. So if you've done anything in your life, or if you've had anything, if you were born into a certain environment or consequences that maybe even or circumstances, I should say, that maybe you didn't even have control over, thank God for Jesus, because Jesus has restored us to our original position of health as children of God. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that means for daughters. So that word of the Lord, I'm going to read it again. I have called you to wholeness. You are not so fragile that you cannot fight. I have reinforced your bones and strengthened your sinews for battle. So What does all of that mean, right? So if you go to Isaiah 53:5, that's a very famous verse in the Bible, and it talks about, is Isaiah prophesying the coming of Jesus, saying that, but he was wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquities, the chastisement, which also translates to discipline or correction, of our peace, and that peace translates to shalom in Hebrew, which means wholeness. So literally, the correction of our wholeness was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. So it's very interesting that Isaiah is saying that. Obviously, Isaiah is one of the most famous prophets in the Bible, so he's saying that prophetically. He's projecting that. He's saying that even though Jesus hasn't come yet at the time that Isaiah was actually saying it. But it's interesting that he didn't say we're going to be healed. He said we are healed. And he's a full, I don't even know how many years he was living before Jesus was even born. So it's really interesting that he said that. He said it in the present tense. And then there's another verse in the Bible that kind of has that same breakdown there, and it is in 1 Peter 2:24. But when it refers to it in 1 Peter 2:24, it's talking about a previous event. When Isaiah is referring to it, he's talking about for all time we are healed. For all time we are whole. And so I don't know how many of you were born after Jesus was here. I was born after Jesus came and died. I think everybody on Periscope was born after Jesus lived, right? And so what that means is that literally, according to Isaiah 53:5, you were healed before you were even born. You were whole before you were even born. So any symptom in your life, any sickness that you have in your body, but any symptom of brokenness that you have in your life, God has already restored it to wholeness. He's already repositioned you back to your original position as being a daughter of God. So you don't have to accept that symptom. You don't have to accept that circumstance, because it's not the truth, and it hasn't been the truth for over 2 millennia. Millennia, y'all. Millennia. For millennia, you've been healed. For millennia, you've been whole. So really interesting. That word Rapha in Hebrew, which is the word that we translate into English as heal, it means to repair. It means to darn, like a darning needle. If you're a knitter, any knitters in the house? Say ew. It means to mend. It means to pacify. Really interesting, right? So pacify means to put to peace, to make, to be quiet. And sometimes we use that in the English language. In modern times, we use that kind of in a condescending way, but really pacify means to just set at peace. That means if you had a reason to be alarmed, if you had a reason to cry out in pain, if you had a reason to be dismayed, it's been pacified. That's what Jesus accomplished. And women, we need to live in that. So any reason that we have had to be dismayed, whether it's unfair treatment in the workplace, whether it's any kind of sexism or misogyny or patriarchy, and all of the things that are happening in the world, I read a statistic once that said that now for girls that go to college, 1/3 of the girls that go to college will be subject to some form of sexual harassment or sexual abuse. That shouldn't be, you guys. That shouldn't be. That's not what God has for us. That's not what he did for us. That's not why Jesus went and hung on the cross. We shouldn't accept it. It shouldn't be okay for there to be a rape culture in the United States or anywhere else in the world, for that matter. It shouldn't be female genital mutilation. All these things that the enemy has set in the path of women to keep us from achieving receiving our full restoration, our full wholeness, our full prosperity as daughters of God. We need to do away with it. We need to do away with it violently. Because God is dealing with us about it now. He's dealing with us and said, this is what I called you to. So when are you going to answer the call? So that was part of the word of the Lord. So let's talk about bones, because the other part of the word of the Lord was that he said that he reinforced our bones and strengthened our sinews, where God has some interesting things to say about bones. You know, in Psalms 34, it talks about he keeps all his bones, not one of them is broken. Well, right before the scripture, right before that says that many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord delivers them from them all. So that means that whatever it is that God has called you to do in your life, that you will not even do, you won't break a bone. You'll be left whole. So whatever it is that you endure, whether it's criticism, whether it's persecution of any kind, whether things become dangerous, that God is going to deliver you out of any kind of affliction, and that you'll keep all of your bones. That's interesting. So that's about wholeness. In Genesis 2:23, you know, where the first man says to the first woman on sight, he says, "This is now bone of my bone, the flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man." You know what that is? That's a recognition of parity. Right? Because we know that before that time, that's when all the animals were being named, and mankind was saying, well, wait, there's only one of us. There's all these other kinds of creatures, but there's only one of us, right? And so as soon as the first man saw the first woman, he was like, you're just like me. We're on the same level. You're my peer. If you've ever been in the workforce, you know the difference between a peer and a direct report, right? He didn't say, oh, you're a little bit less than me, or you're kind of like me, but really I'm a little bit, I'm here and you're here. No. He said bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. That's a recognition of parity. That's something that we need to walk in, right? So in Leviticus 21, there's a list of defects that would prevent somebody from approaching a priest, right? And one of those things is a broken foot or a broken hand. But when God is saying that he has reinforced our bones so that our bones would not be broken, so that because we've been repositioned to wholeness, he's saying that our bones are reinforced and therefore not broken, which gives us access to the priesthood. So that should settle any type of questions about whether or not a woman, I don't see why we're still having this conversation in 2015, but whether or not a woman could preach or prophesy or be an apostle or all those type of things, like settle all that. Settle it. Like God has been settled it. He waiting on us. He's waiting on us at the door. Like this. Like, when y'all gonna get this together? When y'all gonna get this together? So in Proverbs 15, it says that good news puts fat on the bones. So again, God is giving us good news, ladies. When he says that he has reinforced our bones, he's giving us good news. He's putting fat on our bones, you know, but the good kind of fat, you know, not the bad kind of fat. Proverbs 17:22 talks about a joyful heart is good medicine. That word medicine, geha, actually translates in the Hebrew as a cure, but a broken spirit dries up the bones. Well, God is basically ensuring us that our bones will not be dry, that he's called us out of brokenness and into a joyful heart, which is a cure, and it is a medicine for something. So we're going to get into sinews a little bit, and then I'm going to wrap this up. So there's a very famous passage in Ezekiel 37 where Ezekiel, the hand of the Lord, or the word of the Lord came to Ezekiel to speak to a big old valley full of dry bones, right? And he's saying, can these bones live? And the prophet says, well, you know. And then God says to Ezekiel, prophesy to these bones and say to them, O ye dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. And then he says, thus saith the Lord God unto these bones, behold, I will cause breath to enter into you, and ye shall live, and I will lay sinews upon you, and I will bring up flesh upon you, and cover you with skin, and put breath in you, and ye shall live, and ye shall know that I am the Lord. And so then Ezekiel did exactly what the Lord told him to do. And sure enough, it became an army. All of those bones fused together. Muscle came onto those bones. The sinews attached. Muscle was attached. He prophesied again, and breath was blown into those bones so that they lived. And what that is saying to us, when God is saying he's reinforced our bones and he's strengthened our sinews, he's saying, not only have I made it so that you will not fall, but I've also made it so that you will be strong. And so if you've had any broken dreams or broken visions or anything like that, God is going to cause you to prophesy to those dead bones, the same way that Ezekiel prophesied to those bones in that valley to cause them to live. And so you want to be paying attention to whatever whatever God is speaking to you about. Because if he's telling you to prophesy to something that you put on the shelf or something that you gave up on and maybe even were brokenhearted about, then you need to speak to it, because as the word of the Lord comes, so does life, so does strength. You know, sinews are tough tissue that attach muscle to bones in our bodies, right? And so when he says that he's strengthening your sinews, he's making you strong. He's giving you power. This is a big deal, you guys. Like, I don't know exactly what's coming in 2016. I don't even know what's brewing right now. All I know is that God is working with his daughters as we've never seen before on this planet. And so he's saying, I am strengthening you. I am reinforcing you, because the purpose that I have in my mind and in my heart, it will be made known. And I will use you to do it. And so don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I've repositioned you to wholeness. I've repositioned you to health. You're not that fragile. You're not as fragile as you think that you are. So please be encouraged by that word. I thought it was amazing, actually, when I started to break this down. How I found all these scriptures that tie directly into that kind of prophetic word of the Lord. And so I just want to pray over you really quickly that God is stirring up your faith and stirring up your belief and stirring up visions and dreams and plans and strategies that you had put aside, that you had cast aside, that someone that you had allowed yourself to be talked out of based on your circumstance, sometimes even based on your gender, based on people's expectations, based on tradition, that God is speaking to you in the night and speaking to you in the morning and stirring all those things up again and saying, get up, daughter, because I've strengthened you. I'm encouraging you. I am reinforcing you. I have sent new breath on those old things, and so they're not dead anymore, but you are going to have to participate, and you are going to have to prophesy to those dead bones. And know that your bones have been reinforced. Know that I have good news that's going to be health to your bones. Know that I'm going to keep all your bones. I won't let you fall to the wayside. I won't let you be utterly destroyed. No, because the purposes that I have put in you, they will be made known. And I have sent my word forth, and it will not return to me void, but it will establish everything that I have set it out to do. And if I have set it out through you, then you need to participate and show up and make yourself available to do what thus said the Lord. And so I just want to encourage you and speak God's blessing and speak God's peace over you, shalom over you, wholeness, restoration. If you have any kind of infirmity, anything in your body right now that does not agree with how God originally created you, I want you to start saying, I was whole, I was healed before I was even born. You need to reposition yourself. You need to reposition yourself to before you were even born into the earth, you were already healed. You were already whole. I literally just got healed, just adopting that mentality right now. I had a really bad case of bronchitis. And as soon as I started saying to myself, no, it's not by his stripes I am healed. Like, by his stripes I was healed. Like, this is past tense. Before I was even born, I was already healed. I was already whole. Not just healed, not just repaired, but I was already made whole. And so I don't care what you got going on. I don't care if it's cancer. I don't care if it's asthma. I don't care if it's alopecia. I don't care if it's acne. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's HIV. Start saying, I was already whole before I even showed up, and watch those symptoms dry up. Keep saying it. Keep saying it. Even if you still see symptoms, keep saying it. Keep believing it. Keep saying it. Keep believing it, because God is moving through his girls in a way like never before. And so that's it. That's all. And thank you for joining me, everybody. I'll let you get back to your Saturday night, and I will be back tomorrow with more. Peace.